Now. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tuesday Night Talk with Executive Director Lee Reed and myself, Communications Specialist Melissa Jean Baptiste. We have another very special episode for you. We're going to be wrapping up our Meet the Board segment. And before we get into that, and we're going to introduce our last board members for the series, I'm going to give Lee the opportunity to let anyone who is not familiar with the ACRB know exactly who we are and what we do. Go ahead and take it away, Lee.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Lee Reed, Executive Director of the Atlanta Citizen Review Board. And it's great to be on here today. We have some exciting guests, Michael Woodard and Gloria Hawkins-Wynn. You know, for those of you who may not know about us, the Atlanta Citizen Review Board was started in 2007 after the death of Miss Katherine Johnson, who was killed by Atlanta police officers in 2006. We started taking our first complaints in 2008. And since that time, we have been committed, dedicated to serving the citizens of Atlanta by ensuring that when they file a complaint with us, that we fairly address it, we thoroughly address it, and we make a decision that goes to the police department for the department to make its final decision on the complaint. So if you ever have a concern, a question, complaint, contact us. So I'm going to end it there. Melissa, back to you.
All right. And before we get into before Lee go ahead and introduce our new members, we just want to let you all know how the board is actually comprised. Since that ordinance came about, we are currently comprised of 13 members selected by various constituencies throughout the city of Atlanta. The selection process is designated to reflect the diversity and interests of all community members. The ordinance established in 2007 created the ACRB appointments. So each agency has that opportunity to do so. And we have our latest member that we would like to introduce and welcome to the board, Mr. Daoud Sheikh. Mr. Sheikh represents the Atlanta City Council President, and he has been with the APD for over 30 years. So we want to go ahead and welcome him to the board. And Lee, I'm going to pass it back to you, and you can go ahead and introduce our board members.
Okay, so as I was saying earlier, tonight we have Dr. Michael Woodard, who is with us, joining us. He's appointed by APAB, the Atlanta Planning Advisory Board, through the NPU system. And we have Ms. Gloria Hawkins-Wynn, who's appointed by the Atlanta City Council. Now, I could go in and say more about them, but look, I don't want to steal the show, so I'm going to have them tell us some more about themselves before we get into a little bit of Q&A. We're going to start with Ms. Gloria Hawkins-Wynn. Gloria?
Yes. Good evening. Thank you, Director Reed and Melissa and Dr. Woodard. It feels good to be in good company. It feels good to be with professionals. I've been most of my adult life in Atlanta. My parents are part of that mass migration of 6 million African Americans, streams to New York, Chicago, and that's where I grew up. I grew up in right on the Canadian border, and I'm very grateful because it's like California, great public education. And at some point I went to live in Europe. The nun sent me to live there so that I would no longer speak Ebonics, and I learned English when I learned French. And then I returned, finished undergraduate school, and later went on to law school. But it was all service and philanthropic service. That is probably the call of the day in my life, is the engagement with so many great people who saw something alive and something gift. And as a result, being in Atlanta, what is being in Atlanta? Being in Atlanta is, I've watched Atlanta grow. It was a sleepy, someone rejects my saying, it was a sleepy one-horse town when I arrived. Only one major skyscraper downtown. But Atlanta, I would dare assert that the airport took it off, growth. It became an international city. With the city comes both, the double-edged sword, good and bad. The growth brings on all of the things we want and some of the things that we don't want. The chagrin is, I think, much of what we see in terms of the public safety arena is the inequities. Some recent Matrix think tank has Atlanta #1 in income inequality. I live in the Southeast Quadrant, Zone 3, and I'm sorry to say that even as of yesterday, an officer experienced a very violent shooting. But that's why I'm here. That's why we're here. I'm here to engage in a process that looks towards community and effective policing. There you are.
Thank you, Gloria. Michael?
Thank you so very much, Board Member Hawkins-Wynn. You provide a very rich overview of Atlanta that some of which I was not familiar with. That's because I've lived in Atlanta for the last 17 years. I live in Southwest Atlanta. I am a educator by background. I'm in higher education, a professor of sociology. I've been involved and taught at the University of Maryland College Park, the University of Missouri, Columbia, and out in UCLA, and locally here at Clark Atlanta University for a short while. I have always felt that it is important that you be involved and contribute to the community in which you live. And so, again, I have lived in Southwest Atlanta for the last 18 years or so, and during much of that time, I was involved in my homeowners association and participated there, and more recently got involved with NPUI. So I'm very pleased to be a part of the Atlanta Citizens Review Board. It's been an incredible experience, and again, very happy to be here.
We're happy to have you.
Okay, so now we're going to go into some questions real quick, and both of you touched on it a little bit, and I'm asking this question so you have opportunity to expound just a little bit more on why being a part of a board that's about holding officers accountable, what that means to you individually and what it means to you as a part of your community. You know, how do you see that as a part of that service that you're talking about? What motivated you to say, okay, this is where I want to be, this is what because we know, and we're going to get into this in a minute, we know that it's not just showing up at a board meeting and then you're done, you know. So I mean, what is it that says, okay, this is what I wanted to do? Either one of you can go first.
Sure.
We're gonna have just a lively
Sure,
conversation.
I'll start off. Well, again, as a African-American man, you're always concerned and thoughtful about your interaction with the police. And certainly I have had incidents in which I was driving while Black and stopped for no reason. And so I have always had an interest and concern about policing. And I taught criminology for a number of years and got into the various aspects of policing. And so what kind of brought me to this board was the circumstance with Rashard Brooks here in Atlanta. And as a resident of Southwest Atlanta, I just felt that it was my responsibility to do what I could do to enhance policing in Atlanta. And so I reached out to my NPU and to APAB, and one step led to another and led me to this board. And so I could go on, but I'm going to stop there. Yeah.
Okay. And before you answer, Gloria, I want to ask you one question, Dr. Wood. Going through that NPU process, because we have a number of community members who are not involved with the NPU process.
Yes.
So they miss out on some of these opportunities. Yeah. Did you find that process challenging, too cumbersome, or did it work out for you in a way that possibly could encourage others to want to be involved in it?
I simply picked up the phone and called the chairperson of NPUI, Gloria Glover, Eunice Glover. And I would encourage anyone to take a simple step of reaching out by saying, I want to contribute where I can. I had, at the time that I contacted the chairperson of the NPUI, I was not familiar with the ACRB. Basically started to work with the Neighborhood Watch program and do some training, and that led into working in public safety and on to APAB. And so was it onerous? No. It simply was a matter of getting my feet wet and getting grounded, and just a bit of seasoning, not completely seasoned, but just a bit of seasoning. And again, the process I think was very deliberate and very appropriate.
Thank you. Gloria,
Yes.
would you like to respond to that question?
Yes, sir. Repeat it just briefly again. I was so engrossed in Dr. Woodard's statement that I kind of lost the actual question. Please repeat.
Yes. So I was building off of what you talked about earlier, the service, right?
Yeah.
Service to your community, and the fact that we have this board. We know it requires a lot of work, but I wanted you to talk a little more about what drew you to this specific board to say, this is where I want to participate and do a civic responsibility type of thing. What was it about this area? The board, the city has a number of boards, but you chose this one.
Yes, sir. Good question. It is anytime the emphasis is on making people, making the community, making the world whole, it's always a good concept. The more insidious the issues, and again, police community relations is evolved over time. My dad, I never understood this when I was young, and I grew to understand it. He would always brag about never having spent a day in jail. And as a young girl, I could not get that. To me, it was why was that such a big deal? Little did I understand was having grown up in the Jim Crow South, and that concept arose from his pride. And so that was some of the influence that made me understand that there is a system of policing. There's a system of policing and responsibility to the community. At one point, policing was officer friendly. That's when I believe America was more agrarian. People lived in communities and they knew each other. Officer friendly was the guy with the baton. And if you got drunk and he had to get you off the corner, then he did that. As we became more urbanized and people started living in cities, not really knowing who was next door, I think it became kind of a disintegration in the dynamics of community and oneness and each one helping each other. I am so delighted to say that is my background. My background is folks taking care of me all along the way, from undergraduate school to abroad. That it wasn't even money, it was the relationships. And I realized that as a community, that we are representatives of the community, and that we've got to be open to receiving the gifts of everyone. Everyone that comes to the table has something to offer. Again, policing has changed, and I think it's changed in part because of the dynamics of human relations. As I said earlier, Atlanta is, some matrix has it as #1 for income inequality. And if we look at where the pockets of our cases come from, they come from certain quadrants where that is preeminent. Not all, but a substantial number. So as I began to feel what would be a good fit? Where would I have some background? Again, first out of law school, when I finished, Fort McPherson was my last duty station. I spent 24 years in the military, in the legal branch. And I wound up in a community very close by Fort McPherson, which was Lakewood, which was in Zone 3. if you Google it now, it's considered one of the 9 most dangerous communities in America. But my husband and I said, you know what, we're not afraid of poor people. We like this house and it is a good deal. Let's get busy. And that was the beginning of it. That was the beginning of getting busy, recognizing that most of these folks had houses and cars and they were one paycheck away from homeless. So when in that outreach, eventually I found the ACRB, that the mission and the mandate was really the overall police community relations. We have a mediation, we provide mediation. We provide the kind of input where folks feel like they have a voice. OPS is the alternative where, again, folks in times past prior to ACRB could lodge their complaint at OPS. Well, there's a quasi conflict, if you ask me, in my opinion, because it's I don't want to say the chicken guarding the hen house. I don't want to use that phrase, but it is a group that belongs to each other and they may have more deference, whereas, and be less objective, not saying always, but that's just one of those underlying thoughts, perhaps, of conflict when when any of us are policing ourselves, so to speak. But that's essentially it, that it's a wider engagement within the dynamics of the movement of the city, and Atlanta is moving. I mean, the projected population is to exponentially increase by 2030, some projection doubling. That is the city proper. So I hope that gave you some insight as to why it is a bigger picture of service and engagement on a wider city level. And this is one component based on my own background that made it dear to me.
Great, thank you. Hey, both of you, Dr. Woodard is in Southwest, you're in Southeast. And many of our complaints come from those areas. Now, for a moment, about 30 seconds or so, or even less than that, if you were talking to someone in your community right now, and they said, look, I have an issue, why should I come to the ACRB?
Oh, yeah.
What would you say to them? 30 seconds or less.
I would say that the ACRB is your representative in regard to policing. The ACRB is the entity that provides oversight of the police. The ACRB is a primary way that the policing becomes more community oriented, more professional, more responsive. And so the ACRB is the entity that checks bad policing and it enhances good policing. I mean, we as Board Member Hawkins-Wynn said that again, it's not just calling out bad police officers and bad policing. We want to uplift and celebrate good police officers and good policing. So.
Thank you. Ms.
Yeah.
Wynn?
Yes, sir. I guess I would say that the ACRB, the coming of the ACRB is because there was some misconduct, which many of us would have never dreamed that those who are charged to protect and enforce the laws that keep us all secure, engaged in behavior that many of us would have never dreamed of. That's the genesis of ACRB. Few bad apples, not all. Many officers take on the role because it's a lifelong love of being a professional whose mandate and whose hallmark is service. Essentially, officers work for us. What I say to them is that we just be objective. What you will get with the ACRB is a thorough visit and review of the facts and the law, and will keep you abreast every inch of that process. But also, I would also say that there's an alternate. Sometimes it's just a misunderstanding that it's misperception, misunderstanding. We have an alternative. We may be, because particularly if it's a beat officer that routinely and regularly patrols that community, it gives them an opportunity to shake hands with Officer Houston and kind of look eye to eye and kind of feel the human component or aspect of each other. I think that's the simplicity of how I approach anyone that asks me about the ACRB, or if I feel that they're in a position where they need the voice and an objective voice about their issues.
I also want to say that the average citizen has contact with the police to resolve some kind of issue, to resolve some kind of dispute. And the average citizen wants that dispute, that issue resolved in their favor. However, that's not what this board is for. This board is to look at the situation or the evidence, if you will, and make a objective decision based on the evidence, on the facts of the matter. And that may not be satisfactory to some citizens, but it is the appropriate way for, it seems to me to be the appropriate way that this board should function, and the way in which the board has functioned.
Dr. Reed, Director Reed, I would also say that there's a lot of allied agencies out there, like the Citizens Police Academy, the Neighborhood Watch Training, that attempts to give citizens an insight into process. I think oftentimes citizens are misguided about process. I would also say to the people in my circle, I'm on the board at the Y, and I encounter a lot of youth, that the first thing you do is you have to understand there's a bit of authority in wherever the authority, whether it's Director Reed or it's Mayor Dickens, you want to give a certain amount of courtesy to the role, and that sets the tone for engagement, period.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. There was something I was making a note real quick. But, okay, so here's a question. I believe both of you have been on the board well over a year, going on 2 years. Could you give us an example of something that just stands out in your mind of what it's like being a board member? Now think about it like this. In Dr. Woodard, you mentioned it earlier. You know, people, I often tell people that in this position, in this role of civilian oversight, no one is ever going to be 100% happy all the time with the work that we do, right? Because someone's passionate about what they felt how wrongly they were treated, and if someone's feeling like, hey, I had all the authority to do what I wanted to do, what needed to be done. And then we're in the middle saying, well, looking at the facts, the policies, the law, it's going to go this way. Okay. So what is one of those examples that you could give that sort of just reminds you of this commitment that you have to serving the community, of that the pride that you have in being on this board, serving the community, that you would want to just let the listeners know about?
I would say that policing is guided by standard operating procedures, or SOPs. Again, when the average citizen has contact with the police, it's typically to resolve some kind of dispute or some kind of issue. And the police officer is not there to resolve the matter in the favor or in the way in which that the citizen might want it resolved, but rather the police officer is there to provide professional service based on these procedures that he or she must follow. Obviously we can't talk about a particular case, but citizens are so disappointed when they believe or perceive that they have been wronged, and the evidence may not justify an arrest of an individual or some kind of negative sanction to an individual or to a police officer. And And so again, Board Member Hawkins-Wynn made a powerful point. It's based on objectivity. It's based on the evidence. It's not what we might like or what we don't want or what a citizen might want. It's based on the analysis of the objective evidence that's there. And so that's what I would say to my constituency residents that I represent in NPU G through L. The ACRB is here to support you, to ensure that you receive courteous, responsive policing, and that policing is based on these standard operating procedures. And when there's a violation there, or when you believe there's a violation there, let me know, let more specifically, let Mr. Reed know, and they will address the matter. But again, we see a situation through our own personal lenses, and that may not be the lens by which the police officer or the board has to operate.
Ms. Hawkins-Wynn?
Yes, sir. Again, I think the call of the day is effective policing, and that's what we're all looking for, that when we encounter officers and there is a belief that we may have committed a violation, that again, one of the things I mentioned, I think, is one of the hallmarks of the ACRB is the offer of mediation. Sometimes things fester, that sometimes we get repeat complaints, or from repeat complainants, that things sometimes fester, that the offer of mediation is always there. As Dr. Woodard says, we're always striving very hard to make sure we are being objective and wanting the public is available. Our conferences are by Zoom and they're open to the public. So we have a public comment period whereby we're asking the public to engage so that we can be more empowered members in their service. But again, I don't know how to express it any differently other than it's a work in progress. We're offering what we believe is an additional layer of accountability. And we welcome comments. We welcome that folks actually listen to the process and see how we come about our decisions.
Okay, so we have a Dr. Woodard with us, and we have a lawyer with us, right? And both of you on this board. Has your formal training contributed to your ability to read these cases, analyze these cases in an effective manner?
What I will say is that my hidden agenda and being on this board is to enhance or contribute to the professional development and professional service of the Atlanta Police Department, one case at a time. And I am encouraged and uplifted when we exonerate a police officer from an accusation because the evidence does not support that claim that was made against the officer. I am uplifted by that as much as I am when we uphold or substantiate a claim against an officer because of misconduct. And in that case, we have provided the service of ensuring or provided a sanction against an officer for misconduct. We want police officers who are professional and who are responsive, and those who are discourteous and who are not responsive, those who are disrespectful, we certainly do not want them in the Atlanta Police Department. And so, but again, again, I'm just enjoy as much celebrating good police work as I do sanctioning bad police work.
Yes, sir. Preponderance of the evidence, I believe, is the standard, and I believe everyone seated at the table is working hard to be objective, because lives hang in the balance, whether it's that of the officer or folks who are citizens who feel as if the quality of their lives hang in the balance. So I would state that the training, my prior training, I believe, activity to weigh both sides of the evidence, because essentially, as board members, that's what we are. We're triers of facts. We get the facts, we get the policies, the SOPs, state law, and we weigh that up against the facts. So we become triers of facts, and all triers of facts, their hallmark should be objectivity.
And let me just add to that. Board Member Hawkins-Wynn has uplifted mediation, and I've functioned as a mediator. And as a mediator, your role is to be neutral and just to hear both sides and try to bring both parties to some kind of agreement. On this board, our role is to be neutral and to rely on the facts and make a decision based on the facts. And so to that extent, certainly, background has played a role in it, and of course, just the overall role of policing this country. I'm familiar with that, and can't let go of that in serving on this board.
And for the listening audience, yes, we mentioned mediation and investigations. The agency has 4 functional areas that we operate in, and those are investigations of citizen complaints, mediations of citizen complaints, community education, and engagement, and awareness building activities. So just to give you an idea of where we're going when we talk about mediation, that's the citizen and officer meeting together with third-party neutral to help them discuss the incident to see if they can come to a resolution on their own. And then the investigation, of course, is when we actually have to call in the officers, call in the citizens, the witnesses, witness officers, gather all of the body worn camera footage, the any records, and then mesh that all together along with the policies, law, and make a determination as to whether the officers committed the act or not. And then, of course, awareness building is making sure that everybody knows that the ACRB exists. And education is about educating citizens on their rights and responsibilities as it relates to engaging with our law enforcement professionals. I know, Melissa, we're running hard on that time. I know we're getting to the end, and I know you're looking at me like, okay, Lee, wrap it up. And
no, we're good. We're fine.
And so I'm gonna end with one quick last question. What would you want to be your accomplishment when you leave this board?
Well, when my time is up, I want it to be said that in whatever small way possible, that I have contributed to the increased awareness among the Atlanta Police Department and the Department of Corrections that there is a entity, the Atlanta Citizens Review Board, that supports them, but also provides guidance to them in providing professional, courteous policing. And if there is some small thing that I have done on this board, that is what I want my contribution to be when I leave here.
Thank you.
Gloria?
Yes, absolutely. A strong, sustainable organization that still is doing what it currently is doing, setting the trend nationally for a model of civilian oversight with strong training, policy, and a reputation that both endears the community, but makes officers feel like they're getting a fair review.
Melissa, back to you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Woodard. Thank you, Board Member Hawkins-Wynn, for being with us tonight. But I'm going to toss it back to you, Melissa, and then if I need to come in, I'll come back in again.
All right. Thank you so much to our viewers that tuned in. Thank you so much again, Board Member Woodard and Gloria Hawkins-Wynn. We appreciate you all taking the time out to come out and allow our viewers to get to know you better and to touch on those really, really important topics that we did tonight. Now, for our audience, if you have any questions or if you would like to file a complaint with the ACRB, please send us a chat on our website, which is acrbgov.org, or you can give us a call at 404-865-8622. You can also look us up on all social platforms. We are under our official name, the Atlanta Citizens Review Board. We want to thank you again for tuning in. I am Melissa Jean Baptiste. See if our guest catches on.
Okay, I am Lee Reed, Executive Director of the Atlanta Citizen Review Board.
I'm Michael Woodard, representative for NPU G through L.
Gloria Hawkins-Wynn, appointing authority is Atlanta City Council.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, and you will have a
Thank you.
good night.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Good
Bye-bye
night.
now.